Hello there and welcome back to another video here on Wristwatch Revival. My name is Marshall. Thank you so much for coming along. This time on the bench, check this out. We've got this really cool old pocket watch from Elgin. This is the type of watch that you will see a lot. You know, a lot of families have one of these knocking around somewhere, maybe in a drawer, something like that. This one belongs to kind of my adoptive grandmother of sorts. And she asked me to take a look at this thing. Now, the first thing that jumps out, of course, is that the crystal is heavily yellowed. That I don't think that that's the dial being that color. I think it's the crystal. So we'll have to address that for sure. But otherwise, you know, this is about as normal as they get for pocket watches. This is an Elgin from the mid 1920s. And as you can see, it kind of has a little of the vibes of the 20s with the case here with the decorations on it. A quick check just to see if the hands move, and it looks like they do, so that's a good start. She asked me to take a look at this. It belonged to a family member of her that's no longer with us, and she thought, well, we'll just take a look at it and see if I can't get it running and looking good. Let's take a look at the movement and see what's inside. Right. Okay, so this is an Elgin made in Illinois. And this is what they call a 7-jewel movement. This one only has 7. Most watches these days have 17, and sometimes they even go up to 21 or higher, depending on the watch. Does it run? The first things that I'll usually check are the balance, which is why I touched the balance to make sure that it would move. That's that balance wheel there. And then the winding to see if the mainspring may be broken. Well, it doesn't seem to want to run. So let's go ahead and continue with the disassembly here. We'll start by taking off the bezel and whoa, 2 things to notice. One, there's rust on those hands. Oh boy, yeah, we'll have to deal with that for sure. And then also, yes, the crystal itself was yellowed, not the dial, although there is significant patina on the dial. But yeah, look at the hands. They have rust just sitting on top of them. So we're going to have to address that and see how bad that damage actually is. As you can see, this watch got some moisture on it at some point. This could definitely just be the course of time and maybe just a humid environment or something like that, rather than it being actually like submerged in water. Don't see a lot of evidence for that. And we'll just set the hands for safekeeping here. We'll address those in a little bit. This type of watch, by the way, this is the exact type of watch that I like to recommend to people if they want to get into watchmaking as a hobby like I do. You know, this thing you can buy, I looked it up. This is an Elgin 303 grade movement. You can find this movement on eBay right now for $20. $20. Take a look at the case here. I think it's just a normal plated case, though. I'm not 100% sure about that. Let's take the crystal out. It just pops out. And that will, of course, need to be replaced. But yeah, $20 for this movement. And that comes with the dial and the hands as well. And that's just to practice on, to be your first project, to take apart and put back together, to get under magnification and see how it all works. Fantastic. And you know, if you screw it up, it's okay. There's more of them available and you're only out your $20. But yeah, these are the perfect type of movements to start on because they're so big. You see, you know, how much easier it is to see and to work on something like this than, say, a wristwatch movement, which is significantly smaller than this. If you do want to try it out, by the way, I've got a website, Sutcliffe Hansen. I started it with my friend Alex, and we sell toolkits over there. There are toolkits that can get you started in watchmaking as a hobby, or maybe a loved one or a friend who you think might be interested in this, if they like mechanical things, if they like to kind of take stuff apart, if they're a car person. A lot of car people are into watches or into understanding how things work. We've got toolkits that will start them off at the beginning, or if they're ready to just dive in, we've got some more advanced stuff over there. But just as important, we have the watch repair courses from my friend Mark Lovick at Watch Fix, who's a 30 plus year watch repairer by trade. And he made these wonderful tutorials. They're actually how I learned. And we have them at Sutcliffe Hansen now as well. So you can pick up a kit and even get one of those at the same time. There's a link down below for Sutcliffe Hansen. As you can see, everything comes apart pretty naturally here, the normal way, I would say. That's called the cannon pinion there. I have a special tool to remove it, but you don't need a special tool to remove the cannon pinion. You can use tweezers. It's just a little more finicky and it can kind of, I don't know, turn it a little bit uncomfortably, but you can take it off and put it back on with the tweezers, no problem. A lot of times with the tools in watchmaking, you can get away with a lot less than the purpose-built crazy tool, though the purpose-built crazy tools are really nice and they tend to do their job very, very well. So it's the kind of thing that like you can start off with not the crazy stuff, but if you're like, I'm really enjoying this and I want to take this a little bit further, if you want to start buying watches off of eBay to repair and resell or to give as gifts, or if you want to start working on friends and family members' watches, that's kind of how I started with a lot of this stuff. Then you'll start to build up your toolkit as you go along, from the basics up to the more, narrow use type tools. But that's also part of the fun of really any hobby, right? Is to get the gear for it. And watchmaking certainly scratches that itch. Can take the click apart here. I'm going to go ahead and leave the click spring in. You can see that it's kind of inset in there rather than the loose ones that we would find on a wristwatch for the most part. So that'll be fine for cleaning, and I can still lubricate it before I put on the actual click, so it doesn't need to be removed. Here's the barrel bridge coming off. As you can see, this barrel bridge is kind of a sort of a 3/4 style bridge. It covers up multiple pivots, and look at that. This is the telltale sign that this watch hasn't been serviced in forever. It's obvious. We know that it hasn't been serviced in forever, but this is a way that you can know for sure. When the pivots get stuck like that, remember, those are supposed to spin freely, right? And when they're like jammed in there where you have to use tweezers and stabilize the thing just to take it out, that means that a bunch of oil has been dried on and gunked up, and it's holding that pivot in place. You'll note here, no jewels on these upper pivots. There's no jewels on the lower pivots either. The jewels are, the red ruby, synthetic rubies that they use. They make a really great bearing. It is more expensive to use them. They're not expensive, but it, of course, is more expensive. And I'm sure they were more expensive when this watch was originally produced. Why doesn't this? Oh, there it goes. And so this is a more affordable movement. If you were to go into a watch shop during the time when this was produced, this would have been kind of a mid-tier style movement. Like nothing bad. It's well made. It's nicely decorated. It looks good. It'll perform okay. But this is not on the level of some of the watches, that we've worked on the channel, particularly some of the railroad grade watches, things like that, where it feels like everything has jewel on it to make sure that everything's running as smoothly and as long as possible. This isn't like that. This is a more budget option movement. And that's also part of the reason how you can find these for so cheap now. You may be thinking like, how in the world could this thing be worth $20? I mean, look at all the components, the precision, the history, this thing should be hundreds of dollars. And the truth is, you're right. It totally should be worth hundreds of dollars, but the way that collectibles and markets in general work is that there is a supply and demand dynamic. And the truth is that these movements don't have a lot of utility now. Very few people actually carry pocket watches with them. So the demand for them is low. It's still there with collectors and stuff, but it's relatively low. And there are literally millions of these in the world. And that's how you get this weird situation where you can buy something as beautiful, functional, and historical as this for $20. And you know what I say? Take advantage of it. Like, that is such a weird opportunity. Normally that type of thing doesn't happen. And it just happens to be the case with pocket watch movements. Great place to start. Okay, now we can take a look inside the mainspring barrel and see what this mainspring is looking like. It's going to be one of the old school mainsprings, I'm sure. Yes, it is. You can tell already just by the color of it. It's that kind of copper bronze color, where the older ones are either that color or they're kind of a steel blue, and the newer ones just look silver colored, like steel. All right, we'll take this out. These are big honkin' mainsprings. And they're used the old design style where they're just simply a circular, spiral going out pattern. The new ones actually have a different shape. It's more like an S shape at the end. It's more efficient for transferring power. But they hadn't figured that out yet. Now we can put everything into these little baskets. These are just mesh baskets so that nothing gets lost when we put it into the watch cleaning machine. And what I like to do is I like to put the lighter, thinner things in one basket and then kind of the heavier things in another. The truth is, it doesn't really matter. Remember, the only time when these are getting moved around is when they're submerged in liquid. So there's a natural buffer there that creates any type of, collisions from happening. But still, it is also just nice to be able to kind of know for sure that even in between cycles that things aren't just being smashed up against each other or whatever. So anyway, we'll put it into the LNR Mastermatic. This probably was produced just a little while after the watch was made. And while the parts are cleaned up, I did want to say thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. Patreon's a place where you can go to support your favorite content creators, whether they do podcasts or music or videos like mine. And they really, for a lot of us, it's kind of the backbone of how our channels are supported. And I really appreciate each and every person who supports me there. If you do decide to do so, you'll get a thank you card and a Wristwatch Revival sticker in the mail. And you can find a link down below for that. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Now into the ultrasonic cleaner. Goes really simple in this case, just the case. So that's the front bezel and the main part of the case. That's it. These are fairly simple. Again, another reason why they're nice to work on when you're still kind of figuring everything out is that there's just fewer things to mess with. So a good run in those will clean out most of anything that was left over. And as you can see, everything cleaned up quite nicely. And this watch is ready to be reassembled. Now, for this particular one, I'm going to be prioritizing originality because here's the thing. And that means I'm going to use the original mainspring. I could try to find a replacement mainspring, but in this case, I would prefer to keep the parts original rather than use new ones where possible. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to put one of these mainsprings back in by hand. I know that the mainspring winders are cool. They're probably one of my favorite tools that I have, but they're expensive. And when you first get started, it can be really difficult to get those. It's a big jump to take. And so you can work it back in by hand like I did here. Now, one thing you may have noticed is that at one point it kind of grabbed onto my finger cot, the little finger gloves things that I use. And that's the downside to doing it that way, especially on a wristwatch movement. It can pull off little pieces of it and they can get stuck in between and you don't want that. So, or if you're too hard on it, especially again for wristwatch movements, you can bend the mainspring. Now this one's a big, tough old mainspring, so I wasn't as worried about it. And I really wanted to show you that you can do it by hand if you need to. It's not the end of the world. The other thing with the originality piece is I'm a realist, right? And this watch is not going to be used for timekeeping at all. So for me, my standards are a bit lower for a piece like this versus a watch that somebody I knew was going to be wearing day to day. So with that in mind, I'm okay with using the old mainspring. Yeah, it probably won't give us as much amplitude, but you know what? I think that this is much cooler just to keep in its original form. And, if somebody came to me and said, no, I'm going to be using this, like I've heard some people say that they use them as little desk clock, they kind of prop it up and they have it running next to them as they work in the office. Well, if that were the case, then for example, I would be replacing the mainspring on this one, but I know that's not the case. So I'm going to keep it original. Now the keyless works here. I did leave it intact for the cleaning, but I needed to lubricate. So I did need to take it apart and then put it back together. And that's fine. You can always do that. Okay. And a little bit of blue Mobius grease here where I can see that these two metal parts slide up against each other. These are normally held under tension by a spring of some sort as well. So it's important to make sure that they're adequately lubricated. Same thing, the blue Mobius grease, the 9501, that will go on what ends up being a multi-part for this. On a wristwatch, this is a little bit simpler But as you can see, there's the stem, and it doesn't have a crown attached to it. The crown engages with it, but only when the watch is in the case. So I'll just let that sit there for now, and we can start putting in the train of wheels. And again, I'll note here that each of these pivots they're just brass pivots. They're not jeweled. And that affects two things. It can affect overall performance of the watch, and so you know how well it can run. And then it can also affect longevity, as those can wear out, where, you know, properly made jewels, they wear out over an extraordinarily long period of time if well maintained. So, you know, longer than any of our lifetimes, for example. But brass, that will actually go. Now we can put the center wheel in place, just like that. And we can put on this one plate. Again, as I mentioned before, this plate covers multiple pivots. It covers the center wheel, the fourth wheel, and the barrel. So I do need to make sure that they're all kind of lined up before it'll fall into place. You can see the barrel and the center wheel are in, but not that fourth wheel. So there it goes. Just needed to do a little bit of tweaking before it'll let me put it in place fully. Like that. And I'm going to go ahead before I screw it down and put on the train wheel bridge, which covers the escape wheel and the third wheel. Maybe that's the fourth wheel and the other one's the third wheel. At any rate, well, let's see if I can get this plate secured first, and then I'll screw everything down. Is it? Oh, yes, it does look like it actually is in place now. And the train wheels seem to be moving relatively freely. You wouldn't call that amazing, but it's working. This red oil that I use is a synthetic oil. It's called HP 1300. These are all made by the same company. It's Mobius. It's a company out of Switzerland that makes all the lubricants that are used widely in the watch world. Some companies make proprietary lubricants for their own movements, but it's funny because when you look them up, especially as an amateur watch repairer like me, you'll often find people saying it's kind of the same as this other one that you can actually get. Because people want to be specific with the products that they use. You know, if a spec sheet or something calls for a specific thing, you want to try to use that one when available. I'm going to put a little bit of the red HP 1300 around the barrel arbor where it meets up with the barrel bridge. And I just have to sort of be patient and let the oil seep in between the two so that it can spin freely. And then I can put the ratchet wheel in place. When it gets to the bottom, I like to hold it steady to make sure that I can tighten it. But after that, it'll actually turn the entire thing, which will actually put a little bit of wind in the mainspring itself. And then since there's nothing to hold it back, the whole thing will just unwind. But that's a fine place to test as well. So I'm going to use a little bit of grease on top here because I noticed that there was some wear there. And I want, because that's right where the crown wheel actually sits. And I just want to make sure that it doesn't get worse. And once again, a little bit of medium viscosity oil here on the inside rim. This can rub up against this screw here. And remember, this one's reverse threaded. It screws in backwards. And then we can flip over the entire movement and start reassembling the other side. Now that's the bottom of the center wheel there. And I'll put a little bit of grease on it before putting the cannon pinion back on. As I mentioned, this is the one you can take off with the tweezers, and you can put them back on with the tweezers too. Okay, this is another example of a part that I left in situ for the cleaning process. And so I want to remove it so that I can lubricate the post that it sits on, because it does go back and forth. And I want to make sure that there's not excessive wear there when this watch is used. Again, you know, that's just doing it right. The truth is that with the amount of use that this watch will get, that's probably not relevant. But there's many things that aren't really that relevant in that situation. But we still, you know, we still do all the steps. And then we can secure this setting lever spring back in place. And once again, a little bit of the blue grease just to make sure that all of the high friction parts are properly accounted for. And a little bit of Rodico to clean up the mess too. Sometimes I use a bit too much, and it can be useful to have a little bit of Rodico. It's kind of like silly putty, and it absorbs the oil. Helps you clean it up a little bit. Okay, now I can put this other spring in place. I don't know the name of this part. I know what it does, but like this is a part that doesn't, well, the function exists on a wristwatch, but not they don't do it this way. And so I don't really know what they call this thing. Okay, and you can see where that spring meets up with that post, a little bit of, once again, the grease there. And then this cover goes over this minute wheel. That wheel that you see right there, its job is really easy. It just translates the ratio of the watch turning in hours into minutes. That's it. Okay, now the pallet fork. I like to clean the pallet fork separately. It's not an entirely required thing, but there's a little bit of risk to putting it through the watch cleaning machine. I've never actually had any issue with it, but also it's so easy to just clean the pallet fork individually. It just takes an extra 30 seconds or something that I'm fine doing it. And this is the pallet fork bridge. Again, non-jeweled. You'll see right there, there's a hole. And I need to find the pivot, but you know, there's no jewel, and there we go. And then I'll hold that down with my pointer stick just to make sure that it doesn't slip out, because now I'm going to screw it down. And if that pivot were to slip out and it were not properly seated, I could break the pivot on the pallet fork pretty easily. Okay, there we go. Got it all locked down. And a quick check just to make sure that the fork is moving properly after I put a quick wind in the watch, just to make sure that it bounces back and forth between those pins, means that the power is reaching the pallet fork. And that means we've got a moment of truth here. Let's see if just a simple cleaning is going to be enough to get this watch running again. I would be very relieved if so. I didn't see any other issue. Oh, it looks like it's trying to go. Yes, it is. Hey, that's fantastic news that the watch kicked right back up again. There's all types of issues that we could have been facing here, and it looks like we may have dodged them. So that's fantastic. It does seem to be a little bit sluggish, but not terrible. Let's put it on the time grapher and see how it's doing as of right now. Plus 102 seconds a day, plus a minute a day. Not a great amplitude. Beat errors out quite a bit. Minute and a half a day. So it's a bit of a mess. But remember, we haven't lubricated it yet. So we'll start by doing that, and then we'll take it from there. Start off with the center wheel here. It just needs a little bit of the medium viscosity oil. And I'm actually going to stick with the medium viscosity oil for a bunch of these pivots because they are non-jeweled. And I'm a little bit concerned that there may be more friction there than we would normally expect from a jeweled pivot. They're also kind of larger. So I think it probably makes sense to use the medium viscosity in most of these. Now, unfortunately, of course, we need to take apart the balance on old pocket watches. This is one of the more difficult things that you just don't have to deal with when it comes to the other ones. By the way, we need to let down the mainspring here as well. So I'm going to do that by putting the screwdriver in the top and then releasing the click. And that'll allow us to make sure that there's no power in the watch so that I once again can disassemble it. Okay, so let's take the balance, and what needs to happen here, this is what I meant by unfortunately, is we have to disassemble the thing. And that can be a very tricky operation because it requires, well, multiple things that are small and finicky and also close to some of the most delicate parts of the entire watch. So we'll start by removing the balance itself, and that means unscrewing the stud where it attaches to the balance bridge. And then I can set it aside for now because most of our work is going to be on the balance bridge itself. As you can see, I got this really cool tool where you can put a part into it and then screw it down and it'll hold it in place. It actually works pretty well. I saw it and it looked a little gimmicky to me, but it works. It's actually pretty cool. It's not perfect, but it's proven useful enough that I actually keep going back to it. And that's about as good as you can hope. So now we need to push out the jewel setting, and it should just pop right through with a little bit of pressure. I like to kind of go back and forth on either side to make sure I'm not overdoing it. Yeah, there we go. And then on the staking block, it'll just fall down onto the bench like so. This, of course, is made up of two parts. You can see that's the cap jewel, and it's very dirty. So that's going to need to be cleaned. I mean, it will either way, but you can see the gunk on it. So I'm going to put it in some solvent to get it cleaned up. This thing's called a chaton. This is a part that makes it a little bit easier to replace. Like, for example, if this jewel were to get broken, you just replace that whole setting. And you could, at least at the time, order those type of parts from the company who made the watch, and you'd be back on your way. You also can manufacture them, though that's a little out of my skill set. And thankfully, we don't need a new one here anyway, because this one's in fine condition. And you can see how clean that surface is now? That's what you're looking for. Now, there's two different ways to approach this next part. And I used to do it one way. I'm a little more partial to the second way, which is what I'm going to do here, which is I'm going to use what's called an automatic oiler. So the way this works is I'm going to put this whole jewel, this is the jewel that actually has the hole that holds the pivot, into place first. And then normally I would actually oil this cap jewel and then put it into place, but I've actually had a little more success with the automatic oiler of late. So instead, I'm just going to put the cap jewel in place with no oil yet. Like that. And then I can take the world's tiniest little screws here and screw this thing down. So I'm going to get this whole setup in place and ready to go. And then I'm going to oil it. But you might be asking, how in the world are you going to do that? There's this tiny hole in the bottom, and that's where this tool comes in. This is called an automatic oiler, and it has a little needle, and it lets you put the oil in place and then do a little tiny lever on the side, which puts exactly that much oil down. And that much oil is theoretically at least how much you need for a pivot like this. So here's how it works. And then I just pull the little handle, and that's it. It'll deposit just that much oil in. And I found that that actually does work pretty well. So now we can reassemble the balance onto the balance bridge once again, except for this time it has nice, clean, and lubricated jewels. Now, the bottom of the balance also needs to be done. So I'll show you how I do that. So again, it's a similar setup. It's just this one is directly into the main plate rather than into the bridge. So I'll remove those and then flip the movement over because I need to push this assembly out through the bottom. And I do it the same way. As you can see, the two parts fall to the bench. Now I can once again clean them and lubricate them. I use the pegwood here just like I did on the other one, just to make sure that there's nothing stuck on there. And then I can reassemble them back into the watch the same way they went in. And I'll also use the automatic oiler for this as well. So once I get these screws down to hold that chaton in place, then I can use the automatic oiler to oil it, and then we'll be done with that part. So again, and I think the tricky part about this is just to make sure that you've got that right angle to make sure that it gets in there properly and puts the oil directly in the center of the jewel rather than off to the side. Okay, with everything running again, let's put it back on the time grapher and see what kind of results we get. Looks like a little bit more steady. Still amplitude in the 130s. Rate is still a minute fast, and the beat error is way out at 9 milliseconds. I think we probably want to deal with that, although I will note that I've got the regulator all the way to the slowest setting and we're still 90 seconds fast, which is a little bit concerning because I don't really know how else. That's the only real way I know of getting that slowed down. So, Well, we also need to deal with the beat error here though. So I'll show you what we're going to do. If you look down between those pins you can see in the middle, you'll see a jewel. It's upright. It's a little bit of a reddish color. And it needs to be pointed straight dead center down between those. And if you could notice, it's off to the right a little bit. It needs to be closer to there, where it's kind of staring directly at us rather than looking over to the side just a little bit. That will help get that beat error to something better than 9. 9 milliseconds off is unacceptable. And the way that we fix that is we actually have to move this collet, that brass part in the middle that holds the whole hairspring assembly on. We have to move that to the side. It's a very delicate thing, and a big slip of the screwdriver could easily hit that hairspring, which is really thin and really fragile. So it's the type of thing that I try to be really careful about. And let's see how we do here. Just a quick visual check. Yeah, that looks a lot better actually. Let's see how it does on the time grapher. Again, we're looking at the beat error over on the right. It was 9. Okay, now it's 2.7. You know what? Oh, it's actually 2. It's actually below 2. You know what? I'll take that. So that's looking pretty good, but we still have to deal with this issue where the watch is running way too fast and I don't have any way to slow it down further. So I did some research, and here's how this works. There actually is a way to do it. So these are called timing screws or balance weight screws on the outside of the balance. And if you can add a little bit of weight to them, you can slow down how quickly the balance goes. So these are called timing washers, and this is their job. So it tells you a few pieces of information here about the size of the hole in the washer, the diameter of the washer, and then the rating, meaning how many minutes it's supposed to slow things down by adding them in equal parts to opposite sides of the balance. So we want to do, I think this one here, about the 1 minute in 24 hours size, and for the correct size of the balance itself. So I'm going to add a few of these and see if they can get us to a little bit better of a score there. So they come in these little vials. These things are awesome. This is the type of stuff that isn't really made anymore, but you can find it on eBay or, estate sales or retired watchmaker stuff. And these are really simple. I mean, these are just, cut to a specific size and a specific weight, but they are kind of difficult to put on. So we have to take off one of these screws, and there's a couple of different types of screws on here, but almost all of them are this normal type. And then we need to attach the washer to it, and then we need to put it back on, and then we need to do the exact same thing on the opposite side of the balance wheel, because you can't add weight to one end of it and expect it to function properly, right? You need to have it stay, balanced. I mean, it is called a balance wheel after all. So I'm going to put this washer over the threads here, and then I should be able to just screw this back into the same slot that it was in before. It's a little touchy though, because it's still attached to the balance spring. And so I just have to be really careful and reinstall the screw like that. Okay, so with 2 of those installed, let's see how much better we can get this rating. Hey, that's way better. Oh, minus 30. No, I don't believe that. Yeah, there we go. It's kind of settling in at plus or minus 4 seconds a day. And yeah, that's pretty good. As I mentioned, the amplitude's a little low, but that's kind of what I expected by reusing the mainspring. So we're going to call the movement good. And now we need to turn our attention to these hands. Yes, that is rust on them. These are made out of steel, and they have some type of rust debris just sitting on top of them, which of course isn't what you want to see. So the first thing that we need to do is to handle this rust. So I'm going to use some straight up rust remover for that. This is a product that Bergeon puts out as a rust remover. It's basically an acid. So you got to be kind of careful with it, and you don't want to overdo it. This is the type of product that, like, they say to put it in the solution for like two to 3 minutes. Like you don't want to, I don't know what would happen if I just left it in this overnight, but my gut says it would eat away at the metal and maybe just it would be gone, or, it could damage it, especially for fragile parts like this where they're relatively thin. There's not a lot of material there. Anyway, and then I'll take it out, rinse it off, and then we'll see if it, put a dent in some of that rust. Yeah, it looks like it did. I'll still need to clean these hands up, of course. So I'm going to use my little Kika fan here to dry them off. I found so many uses for this little thing. I put a link down below to an Amazon link. I'm not like affiliated with them or anything, but I do like to share products that I find with you that are particularly useful, and this one has been. Okay, so let's take a look at these hands. So as you can see, there's still some rust on them. I'm going to use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol just to clean these up, because I figure that rust remover probably loosened up the rust and maybe will give us a little bit better of a surface to kind of figure out where we're at with it. And I can just do a quick cleanup on these. And yeah, and indeed, it looks like the rust is coming off with this, as you can see by the cotton swab I'm using here. Getting all rust colored. And the minute hand, yep, it's still got some rust on it too. It does seem to be cleaning up pretty nicely though. I feel like that rust that was on top didn't do any structural damage to the hand, just sort of left a layer of rusty dust on top. I'm going to use a very fine polisher here as well, just to kind of remove that outermost layer. My goal here is to get these hands rust free. I don't want to make them sparkle, right? Because this is an older watch and it's got a pretty patinaed dial. So like having like perfectly shiny hands against it, I don't think would look right. So I just want to kind of get them back to a reasonable shape, but I don't want to overdo it. And I'm hoping that this polishing stick will be just enough to kind of match the patina of what's going on the dial. As you can see, the rust is gone, so they're looking okay. I'll use a little bit of semi-chrome polish just to kind of finish them up. This is a kind of a chemical-based polish. It's not an abrasive in the way that you normally would see a polish be. And it just can do a good job of kind of getting into the crevices and just giving it a last little shine. But again, not that mirror finish. That is not what I'm going for here. That would be like a multi-stage polishing process. Last, I just need to put them into the ultrasonic cleaner to make sure that there's no polishing compound, rust, little bits of anything on them. And then we can take a look at the hands and see how they came out. Okay, here they are out of the ultrasonic. One more quick rinse in some isopropyl alcohol just to make sure that there's no debris left on. And how do they look? Not too bad, actually. That is kind of what I was going for. You can see they're not sparkly shiny, but they certainly have the rust removed from them and they look okay. I think I can live with that. I think that'll actually go pretty nicely with this watch. And I'm just glad mainly that the rust didn't get too bad, right? Because that can eat away at the thin things like hands and, next thing you know, it doesn't work at all. They fall apart. Okay, take a look at this bezel. I'm going to use some pegwood just to make sure the inner part of the bezel is cleaned up, and then we can fix a new crystal to it. As we saw before, the old crystal sitting there, that yellow one, completely unusable. It has to go. But I've got a new one. And I think a brand new crystal will do very well for the looks of this watch, because it'll be able to show off that dial underneath, which, again, some people really like me, Some people don't. Some people think the dial looks all worn out. But you can decide for yourself. Okay, now we can continue with the reassembly. I'll put the hour wheel in place. And I'll put a dial washer on. This just makes sure that the hour wheel stays pushed down and engaged with the minute wheel. And now I can put that lovely dial on there. Make sure that it's secured with the dial screws on the side. And then we can put the hands on. So here's the hour hand. Well, I'm not sure I love that look, actually, now that I see it on the dial. The hand itself looks okay, but, you know, these hands were originally blued steel, like they were heat treated to be blued. And of course, that all came off with the rusting and the restoration that I did. And so they're supposed to be really dark against this dial, which kind of makes them match with the outside numbers, the hour numbers. And when they're just sort of roughly polished silvered look like this, that effect is gone. Now let's put on the seconds hand and see how it looks with the whole thing together. But I'm having second thoughts about leaving them like this now. The problem is I've never blued hands before. I don't know how to do it. But yeah, this does not look good. No way. I don't like this. I don't want to leave it like this. So I'm going to learn how to blue some hands today, and you're going to come along with me. All right, here we go. First things first, to blue hands, you have to bring them to a certain temperature. And then this steel will undergo kind of a chemical process where it will change colors. It will start off with the silver color you see here. Then it will turn a light straw color, then a deeper bronzish gold color, then a purple, and then the blue that we desire. The problem is they do have to be in pretty good condition to do it. So I went and bought this stuff. I've got these ceramic polishers that I'm going to try out. I don't know if these are the best option, but they are made for a purpose kind of like this. And I'm going to use a progression of different compounds to move our way up to get these. Again, I'm still not going for super mirror finish shiny, but I think need to get these a little bit better than where they're at if I'm going to do the bluing on them, because the bluing will reflect any impurities or any, inconsistencies on the surface of the hand. So again, I'm going to move up 3 of these and then 3 different diamond pastes after that. So this is just the first level to kind of knock down any big scratches or anything like that. And I can go through the hands and start to get them prepared to look a little bit better for the bluing process. And then we'll do the bluing process. And yes, it involves fire, but just not quite yet. That piece of wood that I'm working on is called pith wood. It's a soft but firm, like it holds its shape well, but you can press into it in a soft way. And it does a pretty good job of holding the hands together so that you can work on them, polish them, do that type of thing. It's kind of an old school thing to use, but it works well. Okay, and then having moved up through the different levels of grit for those, I can give them a quick rinse. I'm just going to use some, again, isopropyl alcohol. I use the 99.9% type for this type of stuff. It evaporates very quickly, and it also doesn't leave any residue on it. And again, this is just to make sure that we have a good, clean process to do going forward. Now, in order to actually do the polishing, I'm going to use another special type of wood. This is not pith wood. This is a type of wood. I think it's called gentian wood. And basically, it's got this kind of perfect property to it where you can shape it to the shape that you want using a knife like this. And then what it does is it's soft enough to give just a little bit with some polishing compound on it, but it's not so soft that it soaks it all up. And that makes it really useful for getting into weird angles or small flat things like this. So I'm going to start off with this diamond paste. This just has the little bits of diamond kind of dissolved in it. And we'll go through, again, 3 more levels of that. right here with this wood. And people use this wood in watchmaking polishing for all different parts of the movement and all that kind of stuff as well. And so after going through that full process, we should have the hands in pretty good shape in order for us to get them to like a mirror finish. Again, not what I'm going for here. We would have to do probably a couple more steps, and each step for quite a bit longer, to get it to that level. But I'm purposely trying to kind of thread the needle between looking good enough to be blued, heat blued, but also looking like they're not perfect brand new hands, because that would look weird on the particular watch we're doing. Okay, after the 3 processes go by there, again, I can just throw these in the ultrasonic cleaner to make sure that there's no more debris on them, and take a look. They look pretty good. This is actually kind of exactly what I was going for, so I'm pretty happy with it. Now, this is my first time doing bluing, but I watched a bunch of videos and read up on it, and I'm ready to give it a shot at least. So I made this little tray out of brass, and then what I'm pouring in here are brass shavings, and this is kind of the bed that we're going to put the hands in. Then we're going to heat up the brass tray that I made here, and that'll heat up the shavings in a more even way. And then that heat will affect the hand that I'm going to put in here. And then over the course of time, I don't really know how much time because I've never done this before, the hand should turn those colors that I mentioned, that kind of light straw color all the way down. I'm going to use this butane torch to heat it. And I'm just going to kind of go back and forth along the bottom of the tray here, and let's see what happens. I don't know how long this takes. I've got a little bowl of water there too that I'm going to put the hand into once it gets to where I want it to be, and that'll stop the bluing process so I can get it to the color that I want. Is it changing color? Oh, it is. It's that straw color now. You can see it's already turned that kind of light yellowish color. Oh, and it looks like the purple is starting to come in at the base there. It's getting darker now. Whoa, it is starting to change color. Whoa, why is it moving though? Is it falling down? Oh God, I see what's happening. Oh no. That wood. Okay, now there's a lot going on. You can see the base is turned blue, but the rest of it is kind of turning into that purple color, but it's moving and it's burning. Oh my God. So I guess a wood holder for that is not the ideal thing to do, but whatever, we're into it now. I just got to keep going and see if I can't get this whole hand blue. You can see the base of it's blue and the rest is turning blue too. It's still got some purple in there. This is really cool. Wow. All right, that looks like good. I don't want to overdo it. I'm really worried about overdoing it. So we'll go ahead and stop it right there. And yeah, well, let's just press onward here, and I'll have to figure out something with that hand vise because that's not going to work. Let's see how the hour hand does. There, you can see it getting darker, darker. Now we're starting to see that purple come in. This is really cool. I did not think I would be doing this when I first started fixing watches, but there it goes. That's turning blue. And we can see it's interesting. Okay, I'll take it off here. I wonder if I took it off too soon, and take a look. There's like this sort of leather in between the pincher there, and it melted. So that's no good. Let's take a look at how the hands look. Hey, that's pretty cool. Ooh, I do see some purple left over there on that one. This one looks pretty blued up, though. That looks nice. Wow, I am actually really surprised. This is my first time doing it, that I was able to get it to that level. That said, I'm not happy with that hour hand. That purple, those purple spots just were a little too much. And the main thing is that when I set the hands next to each other, you can see that difference quite a bit more. So I'm going to redo the hour hand as much as it's painful to do so. And so that means scraping off and repolishing everything again to get it back down to bare metal, and then doing the process over again. You know how it is, like I want to get this thing right. This is a family heirloom style watch. So back on it goes, and as you can see, I upgraded to a metal handle, so hopefully I won't have any burning or melting of the stand that I'm using to get these hands go. But let's watch this again. There, that's the light straw color. Now it's transitioning into the darker bronzish gold. Oh, this is so cool. There, now it's really in that bronze gold. Now purple should be next. Yep, now you can see the purple coming in. And then it should turn blue. There's the blue coming on now. Wow, that is so cool. Now that looks properly blue. And so I can put it in the water to stop that process. And, and I still need to do the second sand here. Okay, so that's got mostly blued, it looks like. So we can go ahead and take that one off. I left it on for another 15 seconds or something just to make sure it was more even. One interesting thing is the handle that I ended up picking actually shows the bluing process perfectly, like chronologically. There's blue, purple, then there's the darker color, the lighter straw color, and then at the end here, it's that bright steel color, which is kind of funny. I guess it means that I'm putting out quite a bit of heat into that plate. Once again, let's take a look at the hands after they've been finished, and that is a much better match than we had before. And I'm not just happy, I'm thrilled with this as a first attempt. This is cool. Now I feel confident that I know how to do this. And after experimenting a little bit, I should be able to get even better results. But for this watch, these look great. And look how much better that looks against the watch than how I had it before. It's not even close. So I can use my hand press tool now to put these hands into place. And the cool part too about the pocket watch is that we're almost done with this thing now, right? Because I need to put this on and then it just goes in the case and then I put the bezel on and that's kind of just about it. And man, I really excited by this. Anytime that you can learn a new technique or a new, learn something new, that's what it's really all about. It means that I've pushed myself and my capabilities, but it also means that the next time a watch comes to me that needs this done, I can confidently say, okay, I've done that before. I will be able to do that. I can figure it out. And I think that's really cool. This watch actually gave me not one, but two new skill sets. Also the timing washers. I had to find those on eBay and buy them, which I did. And B, I've never done that before. So now I kind of have an understanding that if I do find a watch that's running too fast and I don't have any other way to slow it down, well, now I do. And that's what it's all about. I love learning new stuff like that. Okay, now the movement can go into the case and I can even put on the bezel with the brand new crystal on it. I'm not going to snap that down yet. I'm just going to use it so that I don't put the hands down on my casing cushion because I still need to secure the movement into the case here using these two case screws. They just hold the movement steady. And now I can actually put on the bezel. And there we go. We have a finished Elgin pocket watch. You can see the hands, well, they work, but I really just want to show off how cool they look with that bluing on them. It's really kind of blowing my mind right now. But yeah, we got this watch running again, looking good and ready to be back into service. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this journey. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you want to find me on social media, I'm on Instagram as wristwatch_revival, and I'd love to see you over there. Otherwise, yeah, thanks again for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.